Hi everybody, this is Chef Matt from New Orleans School of Cooking, coming to you live from my own kitchen. Like many of you, I've found myself stuck at home lately, and I'm going to use that time to do some serious cooking. Today, I'm going to show you how to make a black-eyed pea cassoulet. Cassoulet is a traditional French dish. It's actually named after the vessel that it's cooked in, which is a crock pot that is narrow at the bottom, then widens at the top. This is called a cassoulet. Traditionally, a cassoulet would be made by layering white beans, different types of sausage, confit duck legs, and maybe a tomato sauce in a cassoulet. Different layers. Then it would be topped with breadcrumbs and baked in the oven. Today, I'm going to show you a version of cassoulet that's been creolized. That is to say, it uses the ingredients and the preparations found in Creole cooking here in New Orleans. My black-eyed pea cassoulet has three main components. The first would be the black-eyed peas, which I'm going to smother down with tasso and our holy trinity of onion, celery, and bell peppers, as well as minced garlic, herbs, and spices. The second would be an andouille ragu, which is a tomato-based sauce. The third component would be my confit chicken legs, which I'm not going to show you today, as that process is lengthy and it takes up more time than I have in this video. Alright, enough talking, let's get cooking. For my ragu, I'll be using a quart of andouille sausage cut into half moons, a quart of diced tomato, half a cup of diced onion, half a cup of diced carrot, and a quarter cup of diced celery. This is twice as much carrot as I would normally use for a mirepoix. I just want that extra sweetness in my tomato sauce. I'll also use a tablespoon of minced garlic, half a teaspoon of fresh cracked black pepper, half a teaspoon of crushed red pepper, and about a tablespoon of some Joe's Stuff Bayou blend, which is one of the Creole spices used by the New Orleans School of Cooking. Alright, I'm going to start out by cooking my ragu. I'm using a stainless steel pan for this, as this is a reactive sauce. That is to say that the tomato, if it interacts with a pan like aluminum or cast iron, it's going to take on a weird rusty orange color. I like my reds to be red, so I'm going to do it in a stainless steel pan. I'm going to put my heat to about medium-high to start. Put a little drop of olive oil in the pan. And the first thing I want to do is brown my andouille. I'm going to let it stick to the bottom a little bit to build up that flavor. It's one of the great things about stainless steel is it holds on to that food real well. You always want to let things stick when you're browning your meat. All that brown builds up to a layer of flavor, and that's something desirable. That's where all your flavor is. Alright, I'm going to throw one piece of sausage in carefully to see if my oil's hot yet. Oh yeah, that's hot. So I'm going to very carefully add this sausage. I don't want to splash this grease on myself. And I'm going to spread my sausage out. I want as much contact with the bottom of my pan as I can get, so I can get some good color on this sausage. Once I have it spread out, I'm going to let this sit. I'm not going to touch it at all. If you move it around too much, that sausage just boils in its own fat, and that's not what you want. You want to let it lay down that good brown on the bottom of your pan. In French cooking, they call that layer a fond. Cajuns have cute names for it, but I never learned them growing up, so if I try and say it, it comes out wrong. I stick with fond. It's a foundation of flavor for your dish. I'm going to leave that alone. Don't touch it. Normally I'm on the instruction end. I don't get to actually cook the food. Now I see why all of my students try and play with their sausage too much. But like I tell them, if you feel like stirring, drink instead. So off camera, I'm going to go get a beer. Now that my sausage has had a little chance to brown on one side, I'm going to carefully start to flip it over so I can get brown on the other side. Like they told me back in culinary school, you brown both sides because you eat both sides. That's looking good. It's not important to flip every individual piece of sausage over, but the more of that brown you get, the better your food's going to taste. This doesn't just go for this dish. This is for anything you're cooking. Build up that flavor. Uh-oh. There's my sous chef here, Panko. He found that sausage I've dropped. I like to call that sausage Florentine. Come on, Panko, it's good. It's andouille. It's a little hot, I know, but you got that. Okay, I'll wait for it to cool off, and then I'll give it to you. Now that my sausage is good and brown, I'm going to carefully remove it from the pan with a slotted spoon. I want to be careful not to upset that brown down there. I'm not ready to scrape it up just yet. I'm going to use a slotted spoon so I can leave that good grease behind. Use that fat to cook my vegetables. Some good flavor right there. Get this out the way. Next I'm going to add my aromatics. That's my mirepoix, my onion, my carrots, and my celery. No onions left behind. I'm using a wooden spoon to do this, so I don't upset that brown. Alright. I'm also going to add some minced garlic to that pan. Now that my aromatics have had time to cook a little bit, starting to caramelize slightly. My pan's getting nice and dark, but not quite burnt yet. I'm going to add my tomatoes. As the tomatoes cook, they're going to release some water. You can use that to kind of scrape up some of this stuff that's getting dark. I'm also going to add my peppers and my Joe stuff to the pan now. And I'll let that keep cooking down. So after about 15 or 20 minutes of cooking, my tomatoes have started to turn a little bit brown. Most of that excess liquid is cooked out and I've got some good stuff stuck to the bottom. So I'm ready to deglaze my pan. That's where you add some sort of liquid, maybe a vinegar or a wine to the pan to loosen up all that brown that you've built up. Today I'm going to put a little bit of cane vinegar in here. It's sweet, it's got some tang. I like cooking with it. Not a lot, just enough to wet the bottom of the pan, maybe an ounce or so. And then you just scrape up all that good stuff off the bottom. If it dries up before you get it all scraped, add some more. Go nice and clean. I'll add my andouille back to the pan now. I'll add some chicken stock to it as well. There we go. That's about a little bit more than a cup's worth. Take a second and scrape the sides down. I don't want any of this scorching on me. Go. I'm going to let this come up to a boil, and then I'm going to reduce it to a simmer, and I'll let that go for about an hour or so. I've left mine pretty chunky. This is a little bit more of a rustic sauce. If you want it to look nicer, you can always puree the vegetables before you add the meat back. And if you want to do this with some other kind of pork, you could get a whole pork shoulder and cut it up and throw that in there. Use different sausage. It's really up to you. This is just what I had on hand. There we go. Alright, next I'm going to start cooking my beans in this Dutch oven. Now this is an enamel cast iron, which I love. It's all the benefits and the heat retention of cast iron without all the fuss of cleanup. Just like with any normal cast iron, you want to let this preheat before you try and cook in it. Cast iron doesn't have the greatest heat transference, but it holds it real well. So once it's hot, it stays hot. So you want to let that warm up real good, otherwise you'll get cold spots and hot spots on it. You want it to be all nice and preheated before you cook in it. For my black eyed peas, I've got half a pound of tasso that's been medium diced, a cup of diced onion, half a cup of diced bell pepper, half a cup of diced celery, 1 tablespoon of minced garlic, 2 tablespoons of light brown sugar, half a tablespoon of black pepper, 2 teaspoons of dry thyme, and 1 pound of dry black eyed peas. So I'm going to start with a little bit of oil just to get the bottom of the pan wet. And let that heat up. And for my beans, I'm going to start by rendering off my tasso. Tasso is a Cajun seasoning ham. It's not really ham. It actually comes off the shoulder of the pork. They take the meat and they season it heavily, lightly cure it, and then smoke it. It has a strong spice and a strong smoke flavor that'll permeate through your dish. A little bit of it goes a long way, but always prepare more than you need because you know you're going to want to snack. See if it's ready. That ain't ready. Alright, now that my Dutch oven's good and hot, I'm going to add my tasso. I've already got a little olive oil down in there. Good and ready. I'll let this brown as well. We'll lay that flat and let it brown, and then I'll brown it on each side. Turn it occasionally. Got my serious spoon for this one. Alright, so I'm just going to move this around, try and get some brown on all sides. Maybe not all sides, but on a couple sides. Mostly I just want that brown on the bottom of my pan there, and to render out some of the fat from this pork. Alright, Alright, now that my tasso is good and crispy and brown, I'll carefully pull that out with my slotted spoon. Before I go any further with my beans, I'm going to take the opportunity to fry my breadcrumbs that are going to go over the top of this in this good pork fat. I'm going to add a little bit more olive oil because the pan's a little dry. Tasso doesn't render a lot of fat out. A little more olive oil in there. Let that get hot again. I'm using some panko breadcrumbs for this. I got about a cup of breadcrumbs here. Straight out the pack. Alright, I'll get those in. They're going to start to toast up right away. I'll let them brown up. Soak up all that good pork fat. Add a little bit of dry parsley in here too. Get some color in. And I'll put a little bit more of that Joe stuff in there as well. Once that's good and toasted, getting a little far there. That was close. Once they're good and toasted, I'm going to get them out of the pot as fast as I can. Now that I have the breadcrumbs out of my Dutch oven, I put a little bit more olive oil in, put it back on the heat, and I'm ready to cook my Trinity. So I'll add my onion, my celery, and my bell peppers. And I'm going to let that cook just until my vegetables turn soft and translucent. So this stuff's been cooking for about 5 minutes or so. I'll add my garlic to it now. I like to give the Trinity a little head start on the garlic so I don't have to worry about the garlic burning up. Put that in there and let it keep cooking. Alright, now that my Trinity's had time to cook down, ready to move forward with this. So I'm going to add my tasso back to the pot. Good grease in there too. I'll add some spices. I've got about 2 tablespoons worth of brown sugar, some fresh cracked black pepper, and some dried thyme. Put that in there. I like a little brown sugar with my black eyed peas. Just my preference. Once that's in there, I'll add my black eyed peas themselves. Now these, I let them simmer just until they're about halfway cooked, just to speed up the process at this point. If you start from dry beans like I did, make sure you let those soak overnight a little bit. Just helps them cook better and cook faster. So I'll add those in there. And that was a whole bag of black eyed peas, whole pound. There's a little liquid left in there, so I'll use that to pick up any of the brown off the bottom. Stir that around real good. I'm going to add just enough chicken stock to cover my beans. Just going to take all that. Look at that, like a glove. Alright. Pick this up to a boil, then down to a simmer, and I'll let this cook until my beans are nice and soft. If they dry out, you can put a little bit more liquid in, but you don't want them to be soupy. Okay, so I have my chicken confit here. I actually prepared this 2 different ways just for fun. 2 of my drumsticks I cooked in a slow cooker. I added enough oil to cover the drumsticks along with some onions and some spices, and I let that cook slow for about 5 hours. These 2 drumsticks cooked sous vide, so I took those aromatics and spices and olive oil and the drumsticks and I put them all into a vacuum bag. I took that bag and I immersed it in a hot water bath and cooked it for 8 hours at 165 degrees. Both methods end up with confit. I did like the slow cooker method for the aroma that it made. The whole kitchen smelled fantastic all day while it was cooking. I didn't get that same benefit from these, but the convenience was wonderful. Easy cleanup. When it was finished cooking, I took it out the hot water bath, put the whole bag into an ice bath to chill it, and then stored it in the refrigerator with no fuss. Whichever way you use, that's really a matter of what you have access to. But I've got my confit chicken ready to go. I'm going to pull this off the bone and use it as a layer in my cassoulet. Alright, so it's finally time to assemble my cassoulet. I'm going to do it right back into the Dutch oven I cooked the beans in, since I don't own a cassoulet. I took most of the beans out, but I left a layer down at the bottom to start. I'm going to go a layer of beans. Then I'll put a layer of some of this chicken confit. A little bit more. And then a layer of my ragu. If you were making more, you'd end up with more layers, but I'm probably just going to have 2 layers of each. And I'll do another layer of my beans. Be very careful not to smash them up too much. Some more chicken confit. Rest of the ragu. Uh-oh. A little light on ragu, but that's okay. Beans again. And I'll cover it with about, let's see, about 1/2 to 1/3 of my breadcrumbs. I'll say. There we go. So that was 1/2 of my breadcrumbs. I'll put this in the oven at 400 degrees and just let it go. As that top gets bubbly and crisp, they tell me I'm supposed to press that down and break the crust and add new breadcrumbs. We'll see how that goes. Alright, in it goes. Alright y'all, well it's finally done. Took about half an hour in the oven at 400 degrees. Halfway through the cooking, I opened the door and using a spoon I pressed down on the top and added the remaining breadcrumbs before I let it finish. Let it sit for a few minutes after it came out of the oven just to cool a little bit, and it's ready to serve. You can put this with some rice if you want, or just eat it straight out of the pot, well, maybe not straight out the pot. It freezes well, so you can save it for a rainy day. That is, if you don't eat it all in one sitting. I hope you enjoyed learning how to cook this black-eyed pea cassoulet with me today. If y'all enjoyed it well enough, maybe I'll put out some more videos. Well, that's all I've got for you. I've had fun teaching you how to cook in my own kitchen. Looking forward to seeing you in the classroom again at the New Orleans School of Cooking. But for now, y'all stay safe, come back and see me again, and I'll teach y'all something else. Thank you.